Suppose you have an e-commerce store by the name of Codecraft Marketplace and you ask what is the return policy of the Codecraft Marketplace. Let's see how the GPT model responds to this query. The GPT model says, I'm sorry, but I don't have specific information about the return policy of the Codecraft Marketplace. I recommend checking their official website or contacting their customer service for the most accurate and up-to-date information. Now imagine the scenario that you need a chatbot and that chatbot should be integrated in your e-commerce store, and the customer will comes in and they will ask your chatbot about your product. And if you have integrated the pre-trained GPT model into your application the way it is, this is how the GPT model will respond to your customer. Now let's change the GPT model from GPT-4o mini to this model and ask the same question again, and now let's see what the GPT model responds to this query. And now it can answer correctly that Codecraft Marketplace offers a 30-day return policy. How this is possible that when I was asking from the GPT-4o mini, it was not answering me the exact answer, but when I changed this model to GPT 3.5 Turbo and then personal and then some random number, it started returning the correct answer. So what is this model and from where this model is coming? Now let's try one other query from the GPT-4o mini. And we will change this query to what is the video upload schedule of the Build with Lol YouTube channel. And let's see how the GPT model responds to this query. And it again says that I'm sorry, but I don't have a real-time access to current YouTube channel. So how we can train a GPT model, or how we can ask the GPT model that if a person is asking about this specific product or this specific marketplace, you don't need to answer from your trained data, but instead take this data, and when a customer is asking about this product, give your answer based on this training data. And this is called fine-tuning, and you want to know how this is possible, so let's get started. So in this video we are going through what is fine-tuning a model, which models can be fine-tuned, like which GPT model we can fine-tune, either GPT 3.5, 4o, 4 Turbo or 4o mini. And then I'll also give you a step-by-step implementation of the fine-tuning process. So we will pick one GPT model, then we will train that model, and then we will ask question based on that training data, and we will see how the GPT trained model responds to our queries. And we will also go through some common use cases of where the fine-tuning can help us. So let's see what is fine-tuning a model. So first we have pre-trained LLMs, large language models, which include GPT models 3.5, 4 Turbo, 4o and 4o mini. These are the pre-trained models, and on the top of these pre-trained models you can pick one GPT model. You can fine-tune any of these models, then that pre-trained model will become something like this after you fine-tune that model. So at the very basic foundation you have the pre-trained LLMs with all the existing trained data, and then on the top of that, when you fine-tune that model, it becomes a new GPT model dedicated to how you have trained it. So what is fine-tuning? So before going to fine-tuning, let's quickly understand what is a few shot learning. So when you ask a question from the GPT model and the GPT model responds to your query, and sometime it happens that you may not be satisfied the way the GPT model has responded, and maybe you didn't want exactly what the GPT model responded and you want some change in that response. So what you do that when you get a response, you start providing hints to the GPT model that improve on this thing, or I exactly wanted the answer in this format. So this is called few shot learning. When the GPT model does not respond to you in the first attempt the way you expected it, and then you start providing examples to the GPT model, so the GPT model can answer you the way you wanted. And after you provide all these examples, so the GPT model answers you correctly, we call it few shots learning. So you are incrementally giving different examples to the GPT model, and the GPT model starts learning based on your example, and then it starts responding to your queries the way you want it. So this is called few shot learning. Now what is fine-tuning? Fine-tuning is one step after the few shot learning. So instead of giving examples to the GPT model every time it does not respond the way you wanted, you can start fine-tuning your models based on on the fine tuning, what you will do is that instead of giving the examples when the GPT model responds to you, you will give all those examples before you start communicating with the GPT model, and then based on those examples, the GPT model will start responding to you. So there are different steps when you are fine tuning a model. First, you prepare your data, and there is a specific syntax for how you need to prepare your data. Then you upload that data to the OpenAI API, and then you train a pre-trained model. So as we discussed previously, that you need to pick one GPT model, either 3.5, 4.0 or 4.0 mini, and you will provide your pre-trained data to that model. That model will get trained, and once it is trained, you will start communicating with that trained GPT model. And if you are satisfied with the way you need all those answers after you trained it, you can start referencing to that model in the OpenAI API. And if you are not satisfied after the evaluation, you can modify your training data, and you can re-upload that modified data to the existing fine-tuned model instead of re-fine-tuning from the very beginning. So these are the quick steps of fine-tuning a model. And now let's quickly see which models can be fine-tuned. So supported models are GPT 4.0, GPT 3.5 Turbo, with different versions, Babbage, DaVinci, and you can fine-tune an already fine-tuned model. And OpenAI recommends that GPT 4.0 mini could be the best model for most of the users for fine-tuning. So now let's jump into the demo and start implementing fine-tuning a GPT model. So here I'll quickly go through the project setup for the fine-tuning a model using Python. So first I'll create the project directory. I'll switch to that directory. Now I'll create the Python virtual environment. Next, I'll activate this virtual environment. Now I'll install all the required packages. The packages are installed, and next I'll create the .env file. I'll paste my OpenAI API key. Now I'll start my Jupyter notebook. The Jupyter notebook is started, and next I'll quickly create the actual notebook. I'll call this notebook OpenAI Fine-Tuning. Next I'll import the environment variables from the .env file. Now I'll import the OpenAI library, and I'll instantiate the OpenAI client. So now we can start communicating with the OpenAI API. So to fine-tune a model, as we discussed, that the first step is to prepare your data. And once your data is prepared, then the next step is to upload that prepared data to the OpenAI API. And OpenAI will pick that data and will start fine-tuning the model you have mentioned to it. And after the model is fine-tuned, you can start using that fine-tuned model. So we will call this first step as preparing your data set. Before preparing our data, let's quickly see what is the format of that prepared data, like what will be the structure of that data, and what should be the file extension for that file. The data structure looks like this. We will have a dictionary of messages. So this is one element, includes a messages. This is another element, includes a messages. These are actually different examples. So you can consider this like when the GPT model responds to your query, and you start giving it different examples, so the GPT model can respond the way you want. These are all those examples which we need to provide to the GPT model. And for each message, we have a list of dictionaries which includes a role, and this format exactly looks like the way we were passing our query to the GPT model. So you need to structure your data the way you are sending your data to the chat completion API. So here we have role system, and then you are passing the content, that how you are instructing the GPT model. So you are instructing here that you are a CodeCraft marketplace agent to serve customer queries. You need to consider yourself as an agent or as a support team member here. And then next we are passing the role user, and then we are instructing the GPT model that if the user asks something like this, what is the return policy of the CodeCraft marketplace? And then we are instructing the GPT model, when you are considering the role assistant, like when you are answering this query, this is how you are going to answer. Items can be returned within 30 days of delivery for a full refund of exchange. So this is like a complete conversation of how we are communicating with the GPT model through chat completion API. So you have a role system, you are instructing the GPT model that how you should behave, and then you have the role user that this is how the user will be asking a question, and then we are again providing that training data that this is how you need to be trained and this is how you need to provide the answer. So exactly in the same pattern we are providing here three different examples. If you see here, this content is same because we are restricting the GPT model to a dedicated trained data. So we are instructing here that you are a marketplace agent and again a marketplace agent, and in the query we are changing the queries here differently so the GPT model can be trained in different ways. So first we are asking what is the return policy, then we are asking how do I track my order, then we are asking what payment method. So these are the questions that the customer can ask from our GPT model, and this is how we are instructing the GPT model. Yeah, you need to answer in this way. So for this query you need to answer this way. For tracking the order you need to answer, you can track your order by logging, and for the payment related query you need to answer that we accept credit, debit cards, PayPal and other popular payment methods. So this is the structure of how you need to prepare your data. So now as I mentioned that these are the different examples we are giving as a training data, and the GPT model requires at least 10 examples. So when you are going to fine tune your GPT model you need to provide at least 10 examples. So based on all those 10 examples, at least the GPT model can at least consider answers for the future queries. So providing 10 examples are the minimum requirements, but the OpenAI recommends that you need to provide at least 50 to 100 training examples with the GPT-4 Omni and 3.5 Turbo. So this is the recommended ones. If you really need to fine tune your GPT model in a better way, you need to at least provide 50 to 100 examples. But the right number can be vary for different scenarios. It depends on how much data you are providing and how complex your queries could be in the future. So based on these provided examples, I have prepared my data sets in the form of a file. So if I run the command ls-l here, you can see here that I have this file CodeCraft Marketplace, and this file includes 10 examples in this same format. So these three examples were exactly from this training data file. The extension for this file must be JSON-L. So JSON-L is different from the JSON. In the JSON-L it is exactly same as the JSON format, but instead of having a dictionary or a list of elements, we are separating each element by a different line. So here we have one line, here we have another line, and if you can see at the end of this line we don't have any comma or any semicolon. Every element is separated by a different line. So now we have prepared our file. The next step is to validate our data. This step is optional, but it's recommended to validate your data before sending a request to the OpenAI API. So for validating dataset, OpenAI provides a helper utility. So I'll just use that helper utility to validate our dataset. So first I'll import the JSON here, and then from the collections or I'll import default dictionary, and then I'll paste my code here, and this code actually refers to that same file which I have created here, CodeCraft Marketplace.jsonl, and then I'm opening that file in the read mode. I'm loading all the contents from that file and I'm converting the contents to a list, and then I'm printing how many elements we have in that file, and we are seeing some messages as well. So now let's execute this and see what this returns to us. So you can see here we have a number of examples. So we have 20 examples included in this CodeCraft Marketplace. This is the very first example we have printed here, system, content, and then we have role user, then we have role assistant. So this is exactly what we have shown here. So instead of 3 examples we have provided 20 different examples, and now I'll paste the utility code from the OpenAI to validate our exact file. So if you can see here, this code snippet goes through the dataset which we have created here, and then it's looping through each element, and every element is actually a message, and the message includes a role for system, for user, and for the content. It's doing all the validations here. So we'll just quickly run it and see if we have any errors. So here it returns that no errors found, and now our data set is ready to be provided to the GPT model for fine-tuning our model. So we covered two steps. We prepared our data set, then we validate our data set, and the next step is to upload our data set to the OpenAI API for fine-tuning our model. To upload our data to the OpenAI API, I'll use the OpenAI client.files.create. So what this piece of code will does that it will pick this file CodeCraft Marketplace from the local directory, and it will upload this file to the OpenAI API, and then it will also mention what is the purpose of this file. So the purpose of this file is fine-tuning. So when this file is uploaded to the OpenAI API, the OpenAI API knows that the purpose of this file is to fine-tune a model. So now let's upload this file. So the file is uploaded. Next, let's print the response and see what we have got in the response. So in the response, we have got the file object. Inside the file object, we have the file ID, the size, what is the status. So this is process, and we are good to start using this file. So what we'll do is that we'll extract the file ID, because when we are referring to the OpenAI API that pick this file and fine tune my ABC model, we will actually refer to this file by using this file ID. Since we have uploaded our file from our local file to the OpenAI files, now we need to reference that file which resides inside the OpenAI file system instead of our local file system. So since this file is uploaded, we will start using this file ID so the OpenAI API can know that which file we are referring to. So we will save this ID into the file_ID. One thing to remember is that the training data file size must not exceed the size of 1 GB. So now let's move to the step 4, and that is create fine-tune model by starting its job on the OpenAI API server. So we prepared our data, we validated our data, we uploaded our training file to the OpenAI file system. Now we can ask the GPT model that pick that file which we have uploaded here and start fine-tuning our model. For that, what we will do is that we will create a job inside the OpenAI API, and that job could take maybe 5, 10 or up to some hours based on your training data. And once that job runs successfully, that means that our GPT model is fine-tuned successfully. So to start fine-tuning our GPT model on the OpenAI API, I'll use the OpenAI client.fine-tuning.jobs.create. So here you can see I'm referring to the file ID as a training file. The GPT model will pick this file based on this file ID which we have uploaded here, and the model we are using to be fine-tuned is GPT 3.5 Turbo. So after we run this command, the OpenAI will start fine-tuning GPT 3.5 Turbo for us, which will be dedicated to only my account. So that fine-tune model will not be public the way we have GPT 3.5 or other models. This fine-tune model will be only available to you, and only you can use that fine-tune model. So let's start the fine-tuning process and see how long does it take. So the process has started, and let's print the response and see what we have got in the response. So here we have the object return for the fine-tuning job, and we have the fine-tuning object ID here, and then we have the status. So currently the status is validating files. Remember that the fine-tuning job could take longer, it could take minutes, it could take hours. When you submit this job, it submits to a queue. So it depends on how many jobs are currently in the queue for fine-tuning. You need to continuously check the status of your job for fine-tuning, and once the fine-tuning is completed, you will also get an email from the OpenAI that your fine-tuning is completed and you can start using your trained model. For now, what we'll do is that we will extract this job ID, then we will start checking the status of this job by using this job ID to see whether our fine-tuning process is completed or not. So I'll call it job ID. I'll extract this ID from this response, and now to check the status of the fine-tune model, I'm using client.fine-tuning.jobs.create. So here I was calling jobs.create, and here I'm using jobs.retrieve, and I'm passing this job ID which I have got here from the fine-tuning jobs response. So now let's print the response and see the status of our fine-tuning job. So here you can see the status of that job, that it's still running. So you need to wait for a few minutes and check again later if the process is successful. So while the process is running and we are waiting for completing that job, I wanted to quickly show you that you can also monitor your fine-tuning job progress here inside the OpenAI dashboard. So if you are logged into the OpenAI platform, you can go to the dashboard, and then under the fine-tuning, you can see that fine-tuning is still in process, and you can check all the details here. So the status is fine-tuning still, the job ID we have, the base model is GPT 3.5 Turbo, and now here you can see that the fine-tuning process process is completed. Here if you can go to the storage, you can see all your uploaded files here as well. So we uploaded this CodeCraft marketplace files and we uploaded this today, and you can also monitor your fine-tuning process here. So we'll switch back to the Jupyter notebook and we will run that script again to see the job status of the fine-tuning. So the status is converted to succeeded, and now we can start using our GPT model. After the GPT model is fine-tuned, so how we can get the GPT model name for that fine-tuned model? You can get it from that same job which we have just retrieved here. You can notice here the fine-tuned model name. It is fine-tune-ft for fine-tune, and then the base model GPT 3.5 turbo, and then it says whether it's personal or organizational, and then it has a unique ID. So to get the fine-tune model name, what we'll do that, so what I'll do is that I'll get this response object, and under the response object we have this fine-tune model name, and let's see what model name we have got from the response. So this is exactly what we have seen here in the response object. And now instead of referring to the GPT pre-trained models, we can start referencing to this model. It will answer us based on what data we have provided as a training data. Fine-tuning process is completed, and we have implemented all the steps which we have mentioned already and which are required to fine-tune a model. And now let's start using our fine-tune model to see how it is trained and how it responds to our queries based on our training data. So I'll write a quick example here, and here I'm using the chat completion API, and I'm referring to the same model which we have got here as a fine-tune model, and I'm asking this fine-tune model that what is the return policy for the CodeCraft marketplace. And now let's see how this responds to this query based on the trained model. And this is how the fine-tune model has responded, and this is exactly what we have provided in our training data. Suppose if I refer to the GPT 3.5 turbo, I'm asking that same question, what is the return policy for the CodeCraft marketplace? And here the GPT model does not give us the exact answer, but it says the return policy for the CodeCraft marketplace varies depending on the individual sellers. It is recommended to review the return policy listed on each seller's storefront. It is not what we have asked for. If I convert it back to our trained model and see the response. So this was all about fine-tuning a pre-existing and a pre-trained GPT model. So now if you have your own system or your application and you want to integrate the GPT model, but you want to train the GPT model so that it can answer the customer queries based on what your business is providing to the customers, you can prepare your data for your business. You can upload it to the OpenAI API. You can train an existing GPT model, and then inside your application you can start referencing to that fine-tuned model instead of an existing GPT model, and it will serve your customer the way you have trained it. So that was all about the demo, and now let's quickly see some common use cases of the fine-tuning model. So fine-tuning model can be beneficial when you want to set the style or the tone or the format or other qualitative aspects of the GPT model. The other use case is correcting failures to follow complex prompt. So as we mentioned earlier that when the GPT models doesn't respond to your queries the way you are expecting, you need to give it examples after every response, and that way it's getting trained, it start answering you correctly. So instead of doing that, you can fine-tune an existing model by using a different set of examples, and then instead of following a few short learning process, you can instead use a fine-tuned model. Fine-tuning can also reduce the cost and latency. So based on few shots learning, you are providing the context again and again, and it can consume tokens in different sizes, and that could also cost you a bit extra. The other use case could be there is some new skill or some new task in the market, and maybe the model is trained a bit earlier and now the GPT model doesn't respond to that new task or new skill, or you have some customized things. So for that you can also fine-tune a model. So that was all about the fine-tuning. What is a fine-tuning? What are the steps to fine-tune a model? And we also saw a demo of how we can fine-tune and use a fine-tune model, and then we saw different use cases where the fine-tuning can be beneficial. Now in the next video we are going through the OpenAI rate limits, and in the rate limits we will see the limits of requests per minute and request per day. Then we will also see the limits of tokens, how many tokens we can consume per minute, how many tokens we can consume per day. We will also go through the limits of images. So see you in the next video.